Throughout the, Ukrainian war, there has been the constant message of what's going on in Russia. What do the Russian people think about this? And to be honest, your average Russian who did not run at the start of this war, they've been more vocal, but those actually still inside Russia have been very quiet. We know at the start of this war, there were protests, but those protests were very, very quickly squashed by Putin and by the police, and that there has not been any significant protests by Russians against this war, which, again, I do see that as kind of sad, but I also know and understand what that risk entails. That if you do go and protest, if you are male, well, congratulations. When you reach the police office, there's your conscription papers. We're taking you straight to the conscription office. Off you go to Ukraine. So I do know and I do appreciate the risk. And I know sometimes it seems as if I do come across somewhat callous to the average, Russian situation. I do agree with that sometimes as well. But sometimes you have to think, when are the Russian people finally going to stand up and say, hold on, this is Putin that's doing this, not us? And in fairness, there have been many Russians, but of course, they've had to flee. You've had an author, a very famous Russian author, recently heavily gone after by the Kremlin because of his his anti-Ukraine war stance. And he is a very famous author in Russia. And the Kremlin have gone specifically after him for that. We know that they've done heavy crackdowns on people on social media. So I know that there are Russians who do want to speak out and who are generally frightened what the consequences might be should they speak out. And I think that should be remembered. That should be remembered when we talk about this. However, as this war has gone on, as we have seen the absolute lunatic suicidal charges that the Russian generals have ordered and the ever-increasing casualty amounts. Remember, the Ministry of Defense said that potentially by the end of next year, if Russian casualties keep on going at this rate, the Russians will have lost more men than the Soviet Union did in 9 years in Afghanistan. They've already lost more men than the entire US military did in Iraq. The casualty rates are being unable now to be hidden, as Russians constantly are really recognizing the rate at which the losses are taking place. And yet Putin constantly is demanding more and more men, ever so slowly and surely. And now we get on to what happened in the wake of this recent, shall we say, forced conscription event that took place just outside St. Petersburg, which, to be honest, kind of unusual. Because remember, Putin's main power bases are Moscow, St. Petersburg. That is where Putin's power comes from. And we have seen, at least so far, a reluctance to have mass conscription from those areas, because that's Putin's power base. If Putin starts to lose support in those areas, he's going to have big problems. And while Putin's conscription attempts have focused on certainly the more ethnic Russian areas that we have seen, sooner or later, you are going to run out of recruits. One big thing that a lot of people have said, even before this war, Russia was facing massive demographic problems. This war is making those problems going to be even worse. And now it looks like Putin has gone a step further, ordering a police raid on wild berries, which, if you don't know what that is, I'd never heard of it before either. But this is essentially Russia's Amazon ripoff. Rather than Amazon, you go to wild berries. That's your Amazon equivalent in Russia. And there was a massive warehouse and encapsulating over 100 acres. So this was a massive warehouse. Yeah. The warehouse covered over 25 acres. So this was a massive warehouse industrial complex. If you've ever seen a big Amazon warehouse, that's your equivalent. So what happened? Well, the police went in and raided. They raided this warehouse to look for men of recruitable age to forcefully conscript them into military service. Now, normally, there isn't a response. However, this is the warehouse. The entire warehouse, the entire 25-acre site gone up in flames. The workers who were being forcefully conscripted from again, a lot of information is being suppressed. So it is very likely that information may come out between now and when I release this video. But so far, from what we have heard, and going off of what we have heard, the workers at this factory rioted because they did not want to be forcefully conscripted. That started such a massive fire, as we can see from some of these other pictures. I mean, just that was the following morning. The warehouse is completely gone. And that was a further look. That was the amount of fire that this has come out from. You cannot hide this. Even though they are desperately trying to say, and Putin has desperately trying to get the Russian media to say, oh, this was just an accident. Just an accident. That's all that happened. But meanwhile, we have had people come out and say, no, police came in, started looking for recruitable age of men to send to Ukraine to forcefully conscript them. They rioted, and now the entire warehouse has been completely engulfed in flames. And this happened in St. Petersburg, an area where Putin relies on his source for power. Not too long ago, Putin did his big, end of year speech where you actually saw some people in Russia questioning Putin's, leadership. One in particular of, why isn't the reality of Russia like the one that you put forward on TV, or questioning, of course, the war losses that were going on in Ukraine. Seems to me there's more going on in Russia than at least Russia is letting on. And especially when you have something like this and a reaction that essentially would completely destroy such a massive warehouse, and they are trying to cover it up, saying that this is just an accident. It's just an accident. Nothing happened here. But meanwhile, we've got workers coming out and saying, no, that's not what happened. The police came in, they tried to forcefully conscript people. We rioted. the warehouse got burnt down. Yeah. If more things happened like this, and it'll be interesting to see if more things do happen like this in Russia, will Putin's hold on power be a continuing stable one, or is this a blip, or is this the sign of things to come this year in Russia? I I generally don't know which one it is going to be, but time will tell. So, as always, thank you very much for watching, and of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.